Welcome to the Forging Wellness Podcast, where we go beyond the basics of health and wellness to build stronger minds, bodies, and communities. I'm your host, Jesse Clark, a firefighter, paramedic, and coach with 19 years as a first responder. I have a passion for this job, for my family, and for truly enjoying life. But I'll be the first to admit I haven't always gotten it right. Had my ups and downs, made mistakes, and learned some lessons the hard way. But that's what this podcast is all about, learning, growing, and forging a better path together. We're diving into mental and physical health, fitness, nutrition, sleep, leadership, real-world challenges, history, and what it truly takes to thrive. Whether you're a current first responder, aspiring to be one, retired, or the spouse of one, this is for you. Life is more than just making it through the day. Let's forge ahead together. Now let's get into it. Today we have with us Matt Soule. He is an author, speaker, Cold Club founder, and stress performance coach. So Matt, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Jesse, I appreciate you having me on your show today. Yeah, my name is Matt Soule, and I focus on stress, specifically, usually high to extreme stress for many cases. And part of what got me here is a lot of life experience within that realm, a lot of chaos and so forth early in my life. And I decided to make that my life's mission, to address that and help people through, as I found tools that really worked for me that I wasn't really finding anywhere else at the time.
Yeah, so you're pretty open about your childhood adversity. You went on to martial arts mastery. You spent a long time with Wim Hof and all the trainers there. And you also just released a book, right? That came out last year, Stronger Through Stress. Is that right?
Yeah, stronger through
Okay.
stress, and just trying to highlight a lot of what I call the root stressors. So what are the fundamental stresses that show up in the body? Because stress is a nebulous term. It's kind of hard to wrap around because it's kind of, we feel it a lot of different ways. So I really wanted to identify these key things in the body, like what does stress look like? And more importantly, how can we leverage the positive end of it to get the best out of it?
Okay. And then I think I saw you've got another book that is going to be coming out too, The Stress Paradox. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. The stress paradox. And it's a series of interviews. I got the really cool opportunity to work and interview a number of people that are great in their own domains, like some of our Olympic coaches, top speakers, financial experts, guys that are more or less in the 1% of their, given profession, and just kind of listen to them. Like, what do you guys do for stress? How do you leverage it? How do you manage all of those pieces? And what I found is not only were they incredible stories, but a lot of them are dealing with just a tremendous amount of adversity in their own lives, just crazy stuff. The
Yeah.
stories blew me away. So
Okay.
it's a collection of those, and just diving into more of how we can help people leverage the good side, find a sweet spot.
Well, that's exciting. I'm excited to read that book. I mean, coming from the first responder world, we are constantly dealing with stress. So this hits very close to home for all first responders. But at the same time, I would say this obviously rings true for everybody. We are a stress-filled society, somewhat fueled by our own making, right? But that is a reality. Everything is time crunched. Everything turns into this constant chronic stressor that we're dealing with. And we don't have the same releases for it that back in the day that, of our ancestors that we used to, right? We're not typically fighting for our lives or trying to survive something or running from it. So hopefully we'll get into all of that a little bit. And this really, I'm going to take a stab at this. Your mission really isn't necessarily reducing stress. It's really about kind of owning it and getting stronger because of it.
That's right. Well, we can't avoid stress. You just said it. We're gonna have to deal with all of these stressors every day of the week, all the time. So instead of trying to fight it or push it down or whatever, let's harness it. Let's grab a hold of it and flip the script.
Okay. So I'm gonna warm us up with some questions here. These are gonna be kind of just a couple quick fire questions. But what's the weirdest thing that you've ever seen somebody do in a cold plunge?
The weirdest thing, man, I've seen a lot of things. How about like a full spiritual or sexual experience? Both of
Okay.
those. I've seen them
Okay.
both.
Okay.
Yeah, that's weird to see, in a
Sure.
public setting. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, private setting, absolutely, you do whatever you do you.
Yep. Yep.
But public setting, let's Okay. All right.
Yeah, that gets awkward.
Okay. So you are stranded on a mountain. What is your preferred breathing technique when you're in a pinch?
So if I'm in a pinch, real time breathing. So I just want to manage that breath nice and slow. So long as I'm not doing high intensity output, I'm going to go right to the nose.
Okay. Just nasal breathing.
Nasal breathing and try to keep it rhythmic because so often when we stress, we have unintentional breath holds. We'll hold
Mm.
our breath and start to get breathless. CO2 builds up and we get very anxious and we're not able to access really what we know or should do. So I'm just going to be calm and keep the breathing rhythmic and shift to the nose as much as possible.
Okay. So let's dive into your past, your history, who you are a little bit. I labeled this kind of like from chaos to control. So you talk pretty openly about growing up around domestic violence, but how did that shape your relationship with stress and personal power?
Wonderful question. I think one of the biggest challenges when you grow up in a domestic violence situation is that nothing ever seems stable, right? Nothing ever feels like you've got security or predictability around a given situation, especially when it's in the home. Like that's supposed to be the sanctuary, the safe place. And so because of that, I think I gravitated toward chaos all the time. It's like that's where I felt comfortable. So I made decisions that led me into more and more chaotic
Yeah.
environments. And that's sort of a spiral to the downside. That can get pretty dangerous pretty quick. And my attitude was I was seeking high risk endeavors, whatever that looked like. Everything from different jobs I would take on, like what's the most dangerous job? Let's go do that one. Or what's the deal? So that shaped my early experience. And when I figured out that actually that's not the best way to go about it, I can harness it, right? I can, not that I have to avoid those circumstances, but actually I can make better decisions and have some ownership around stress. And the early sort of piece of that was martial arts. And that's what led me into much more discipline, stability, and really thinking about my choices in a different way. And I found that was the way better way to do it. So way better way to live. And when I started to do that, gosh, my life flourished and I started to be able to actually look outside and have stable environments and promote those, build a family, build business, and have a lot more success around it.
I love that. Welcome to first responder life, like driving into chaos. Let's add more fuel to the fire. But absolutely, talking about, where it's supposed to feel safe, driving you to chaos, but then, finding that we can lean in to, because really it is what makes us who we are in the end, right? Is where do you flourish? Where can you be successful? I'll say for myself in a similar circumstance, I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life, but when I found myself in an emergent situation and realized that I had been a part of those and that my mind doesn't completely shut down when I'm in the middle of those. I can actually be helpful. That's really what led me to being a first responder, becoming a firefighter. And so obviously your story is much different than my story, but similar in the sense that we can lean into obviously where our passion is and where we thrive. And if it's chaos, I mean, there's things out there that we can lean into with that, right?
I would say, yeah, we want the chaos, like or we want to be able to handle ourselves within the chaos. Like, I don't want to get rid of that side. I think at this point, it's a skill. And not
Yes.
a lot of people have that skill. A lot of people freeze. They don't know how to take the right next action. So I'm grateful for that piece. I think the problem comes in, Jesse, when we're always seeking it. Like,
Yeah.
even when we don't have to have it, that's where I
Yeah.
think things start to break down. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to thrive in those hard situations, but I don't want to get out of that and go, okay, where's the next one that I can, I don't want to choose that chaos. I want to be able to show up there and manage it when I get to it. Those are different things, right?
Totally. I'm laughing because I can see my wife right now because there's times where I clearly just enjoy pushing her buttons and poking the bear. Like, we are in a good spot. Why do you need anyway? Okay. So and you have a club, it's called the Cold Club, but it's not just cold plunging, it's contrast therapy. So when did that come into the picture for you? Because martial arts was a big part of your life, and then when did this come into the
Well, it kind of emerged out of my work with the Wim Hof method. And I started calling my groups that would come to the cold training you're my cold club. We're all getting together, get into the cold waters. I love to lead people in nature. Alaska is one of my primary places that I take people because it's got just the best cold training grounds in the world that I've found. And I've been everywhere. I've trained people all over in Poland and Iceland and, name the place, I've been there. And Alaska's got just unique features. So I love that. And I wanted to kind of reinforce this idea of community, people getting together, doing hard things and being better because of it. And that's where it really started in like around 2017, 18. I started using that term, but I didn't really promote it as its own brand because of my affiliation with the Wim Hof method. But this past year in 2025, I took a step away from the Wim Hof method after being there for about 9 years and being part of that organization, and decided I was going to train my own instructors and launch this brand fully. So really this year is where it's official.
Okay. So that had to be stressful for you. But you obviously still dealing with stress in that. Did everything that you teach, was that helpful and beneficial in, stepping out on this new journey?
It's a must. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough because even with all of the tools that I've got and the way I manage stress, I think I do it pretty well. As soon as I left and I felt all of this like sort of overwhelm on me, it's like, here we go. Oh,
Yeah. Okay.
and I've been rising to that occasion daily, because I'm doing 16-hour days a lot of times right now.
Awesome, man. I'd love to hear that. I'm excited for you that you're doing that. At this point, you've trained well over 10,000 people. Is there patterns that you've noticed when it comes to people and stress?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things that the cold helps us understand best is how we show up to stress. In other words, when you go in that cold water, I don't care who you are, it sucks, right? Like, it gets better as you habituate, as you get used to it, as you kind of know
That,
what you're
that-
looking for. Well, I mean, better than the first time,
yeah.
where you're just like, geez, it just becomes overwhelming for some of us at the very first part. And for me, it was, I hated the cold. I could do the heat. Put me in the desert. Don't give me water. I
Yeah.
don't care. I could do fine. But you put me in the cold and it was debilitating. I hated it. My muscles would lock up at the beginning for significant cold. I didn't even know a process around it. I thought people were just built for the cold or built for the heat.
Yeah.
But obviously there's a method behind the madness. And once you learn it, yeah, it does get better. Right. But it always sucks. Always.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
always hard. It's
No.
it's just I don't care. So because of that, it's a wonderful tool as a mirror. Like, how do you show up to stress? And a lot of people get in there and they fight it. Well, you're not going to win that fight. You better learn how to accept it so that you can just change, manage it in the moment, and then get out and feel wonderful after. Like, that's a better thing. Or you see other people that it's quite common where they're scared of it. You get a lot of fear, like, I'm not capable.
Mm.
Well, you see those things show up in your life as well. You tell yourself, I'm not capable of something. Well, sure enough, that's going to be true for you. Or you can learn to flip it and say, oh, actually, I'm way stronger than I thought I was. Yeah, we do have the machinery. I come from, millennia of just badass people that made it to where I can live in this life nice. I mean, think about what our ancestors had to go through.
Totally.
They contended with everything.
Absolutely.
So to think that we can't show up to this stuff, man, we've been managing this stuff for forever.
Yeah. I like that as a pattern. Like cold plunging is a mirror. So it shows you really how you deal with stress. So I'm gonna hit you because the reason I even jumped in was because I agree. I've got a cold plunge in my garage that I use every morning. Every single morning I have a battle with myself. Like, why am I doing this? Like, this is supposed to get easier, but it never gets easier. It's still a battle. It's still something I have to force myself to do. But overall, the process itself of doing it and feeling good about it is better, easy every morning.
The resistance doesn't go away, does it?
No.
The mind just starts talking, hey, you did it yesterday. You don't need to go again today.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And Ed was feeling really good. All you got to do is walk back inside and it's right there.
Yeah.
Or you know what? This morning feels like a sauna morning. That's right next to my cold plunge. We don't need the cold at all.
Yeah, the cold has resistance to it. And then
Uh-huh.
that's why it's I love contrast. Like if we're looking for health and leveraging well-being and getting endurance adaptations, any number of things, sauna is awesome. Like
Yeah,
sauna is great for a number
totally.
of reasons, right? But the cold is the resistance. Like it's not hard to get into sauna. can't wait to get
No.
in the damn thing,
Yeah.
you know? And even when it becomes uncomfortable, because I know some people struggle with heat, they sit in that sauna. And one of the things that happens is we start to get that dynorphin increase. Dynorphin is that discomfort that you really experience in the sauna. It's great because it helps resensitize endorphin receptors. That's our pain management system. So it's wonderful for that side. And it sucks for some people and worse than others for sure. But the cold, and the cold is resistance. It just
Yeah.
stares at you and says, do you really want to get in? I try to shut that part of my brain off that wants to
Yeah.
talk to me about anything. But that way I'm not even thinking about the resistance. I'm just like going through the motions.
Yeah.
It's almost like a
I feel
meditation.
like the tolerance too, like you're right, 100%. But the tolerance, like I built up in my sauna, I started 20 minutes, increased to 30, feel really good, 40 minutes sitting in my sauna. And we'll talk about protocol later, but when I'm just doing one or the other, I could sit in my sauna for a good amount of time and feel pretty comfortable in there. But the cold plunge, now I have worked up to longer time frames, but I can't do that on a consistent, like I'll do a 10-minute one day and the next day I hop in and I'm like, today feels like a 2-minute day. I don't have that with the sauna. I don't hop in there and be like, today feels like a 2-minute day. I can be in here for 40 minutes consistently. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the cold shows up different every day.
Yeah.
And that's something I don't think everybody realizes. And if you're not paying attention to that, which some people they shut it out and they only go by time, people often find that they get sick more often, that their body starts breaking down, that they start to steer themselves toward more sympathetic dominant states. So like a lot of negativity comes out of that if you ignore it. You got to that's part of the cold. Some days it's a 1 minute day, and other days it's just like, oh, I can hang out in here and I feel good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think what you just said right there it's key to a lot of things. I'm big in fitness. That's what I do for my department. Um, and just showing up and doing what it is that day makes the world of difference. If all you've got is 20 minutes to get on the treadmill and move or get outside with a backpack and ruck or whatever it is, showing up for yourself in that moment is all that really matters. Whatever it ends up being, goes a long way each and every day that you choose to do that. So I love that. That was
yeah,
spot on.
I mean, you nailed it. And I think a lot of times we set up unrealistic expectations for ourselves.
Mm.
It's like it's got to be this perfect regimen or nothing. No, like just go. And if you can pick up a backpack with some cans in it, because that's all you've got lying around, and go for a mile, go do that.
Yeah.
You get in that cold plunge, even if it's 30 seconds and you have 3 breaths that are calm, cool, get out. If that's all you have for that day, do that. And then the days when you do have that extra energy and you can go that extra mileage, all right, honor yourself and do that.
Yeah.
And if we show up consistently in that way, life it gets so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Cause it's tough. I don't think there's nothing wrong with all these different things that are out there for challenges for people because it kind of puts you in this regimen. And like, you're like, oh, if I want to do this to the T, and for the challenges, I get it. Just, you're in it, try and focus on that. But long term, once you're not doing that challenge anymore, the reality is people still think, well, if my day doesn't look like that anymore, am I even really doing anything? And the reality is absolutely. And it is about consistency and not consistency with being perfect, just consistency with showing up.
That's so
So
true. I mean, that's really the arc and the art of training.
yeah.
It's like, we're great at short term. I'm going to put all my energy and focus into this one thing. But how do you sustain it over time? And it is about showing up. It's about saying, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can do. For me to like try to, for lack of a better term, sort of hack in or harness the body's natural and brain's natural desire for like newness and change, because we need that, right? We get bored super easy and start to check out. I do seasonal training. A seasonal training is where it's at. So I get something where I'm 3 months, I'm really focused on this and, sort of maintaining the other pieces and just walking through, and then flip it. Every 3 months it changes. So I've got a different focus. And that to me has been extraordinary, consistent training over years and years, as opposed to just like you show up super hard for 7 weeks and then you don't do anything the rest of the year, which
Yeah.
is what a lot of people fall victim to.
Yeah, that reigns true real big with our first responder group. It's something we've been talking a lot about, even within my department, but I know it rings true for everywhere. The reality is, we have so many people that come in and are rock stars. Like, they just kick ass. They're awesome at what they do. We hired them for a reason. And there is always times, for whatever reason, fall into this groove that just isn't them. And so what we've found really is that, like, hey, you got to stay moving. You don't have to be the way that you were in academy your lifelong career. In fact, that's probably not very sustainable. But what we do want for you to do is challenge and push yourself at different areas. And it doesn't always have to be promotion. We're not trying to get people to move through the ranks, but what is it for you? Is it going to just an outside training class and bringing that back and teaching it for other people at the department? So yeah, just little things here and there. It doesn't have to be big stuff, but always looking for that next step of whatever it is to stay in something. So
Yeah, keep ourselves engaged. I can't remember who said it, but it nailed it so clearly for me. Somebody's describing the difference between acceleration and velocity. And it was on a podcast years and years ago that I listened to, and it was talking about our astronauts in space. And those guys are up working on the space station, and it's like every 4 minutes you see this rushing crazy light because you're traveling at 22,000 miles an hour.
yeah.
And so you're seeing a sunrise and sunset every 4 minutes. So you're seeing this rush of light, and then it goes completely black. And so during the black, you don't feel anything. It feels like you're suspended and still, nothing's happening, but you're still traveling at 22,000 miles per hour. That's velocity. But then you've got acceleration, and that's when you see the sunrise coming on, and it feels like rushes of adrenaline. It's awesome. We're fully engaged. That's life. Like every time we get that acceleration pedal, everything feels amazing. It feels so good, but we can't keep it like that all the time. And so when it goes away, and even though we're still having that momentum and that velocity, sometimes we check out. We're like, nothing's happening.
Well, I like that.
You know what I'm saying? So
That is a great analogy.
it stayed with me because I was like, oh, that's life. How do we maintain the velocity side of life and just stay engaged even in the dark?
That's good. Okay, we're going to go into the Cold Club confessional segment. What is one thing that you preach? Because we're all human, but what's one thing that you preach, but you still struggle with yourself?
With as far as cold plunging is concerned,
Whatever, if anything that comes to mind. I mean, yeah.
I would say not forcing yourself to do
Okay.
stuff because sometimes I'll be the tyrant to myself.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I say don't be the tyrant. Show up, just listen, pay attention. I'll still find myself just like being all, you better get in that thing. I don't care what you feel like today. I don't care if you're tired. You're gonna go push whatever that pushing is. So I
Yeah,
still
so
find
the
myself doing that.
contrast to what we're talking about, showing up for yourself, but at the same time, you also preach listening to your body and, not forcing, it's like an injury, not forcing when you're injured. Like, this is common for fitness. People who are at high levels of fitness, whether they're runners, CrossFitters, whatever, they get an injury, and everybody knows that the best thing that you can do for an injury is recover, let it
Yep.
heal.
Yep.
And the number one thing that we do is like, I'm going for that run, or I'm going to go do that workout today, even though I'll just modify it. I'll just work around it. This isn't black and white. There is obviously opportunity in fitness for, if you are injured, to still work out and still do stuff that doesn't aggravate the injury. And that is important to do. But
For
in
sure.
your line of work, what you're saying, just listen to your body. Don't force something that shouldn't be done.
And I still find myself doing those things. Like, all right,
Okay.
I've got this problem, or I'm exhausted. Maybe I should take the day off from martial arts. No, I'm going to go roll jujitsu. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And I end up usually paying a price for that and
Yeah.
learning that lesson hard over and over again. But, take it in stride.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the learning experience. And that's part of doing it. And sometimes, does that push outweigh, it's tough because it's that dichotomy of things, right? That the reality is we have to listen to our bodies, and there's times where we also have to quiet our minds and actually push ourselves a little bit too. So knowing when to do that and when not to do that.
You warm?
Okay, so ever had a this is a terrible idea moment while in the cold?
Terrible idea moment in the cold comes to mind.
Like, has there ever been some time that maybe like, this is too cold. I chose the wrong spot, or because I mean, obviously, you don't just do cold plunges. You actually go out into the wilderness,
Yeah.
make people hike in the cold a little bit to get to where they're going. So, is there any moment where you're like, "Ooh, maybe this is a bad choice"?
Well, there's definitely times when I feel like that, but when I'm in it, it's like I want to abandon that thought as soon as possible.
Okay,
Like a couple of years ago, we were up in Alaska and our coldest day was negative 29. I mean,
okay,
just brutal. The cold water was, as close to, probably 30 because it's moving in the river. So it was a little under freezing, but still moving. The edges of the river were iced over and the ambient temperature was so cold that the water looked like it was a hot springs. It was just steaming like crazy, you know? The day or two before that, my buddy and I, we were out there scoping. He's a fellow instructor. We run the retreats together. And we were out there going, what are we doing? Like, are we still going to do this thing? It's so freaking cold. But mindset wise, I try to abandon the thought. Sometimes it sucks. Somebody get an injury and you're like, oh, God, we hiked 6 miles. Now that happened before, where now it literally took all day, to carry somebody back down. So now I carry sleds with me. I've got like all these different tools that I make sure to have when I'm out in the wilderness from those lessons learned. But usually I try to abandon that thought. I try to get myself into sticky situations all the time because it's fun.
yeah. It is, especially when you're in that group setting like that. I mean, that's a pretty long known thing that when we suffer, the bonds that come out of that end up being incredible. And that suffering together really does so much out of it.
I mean, you'll create lifelong friends, especially if you're going to see these people and suffer together on a regular basis. But even if you're together for 3 or 4 days, 5 days, I can't tell you how many guys that still like groups, cohorts that have gone through training that still talk, even though they're from all over the world. That was the
Yeah.
only place they met. And now they make sure to do stuff every year together. Like it forges bonds, man.
It's awesome.
And I think it's beautiful.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So if you had a mascot for Cold Club, what would it be? Or maybe you do.
And we kind of do it. It's a shivering sun.
Okay.
So a little
Okay.
bit, and it's got the
Yeah.
mountains and
Perfect.
and everything inside of the logo, but yeah, we use the Shivering Sun.
Shivering sun. Speaks to contrast therapy right there.
There, yeah.
Okay. Is there a wellness trend that you secretly love, even though it's kind of cringe?
Even though it's kinda cringe. Jeez, I guess cringe is kind of perspective.
Totally.
I try to get on the things that really work for me, and they're pretty standard. This is kind of a boring answer, I suppose, but like I try to eat carnivore as much as possible, for example.
Okay.
And I don't think that's cringe. I think it's, incredibly liberating, but I thought it was extreme at the beginning. I was like,
Okay.
I pushed that away for a long time until I tried it and I did blood tests around it. And I was like, actually, this is great, but cringe. Jeez, yeah. Maybe some of the weird breathing stuff,
Okay.
like the weirdo breathing,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
I don't know that for some people, they look on it and they're like, what the hell are you doing? Like you're kind of a weirdo.
Yeah. What's this kook doing?
Like some of the vacuum stretch and belly rolls, and
Okay.
just weird,
Sure.
like deep breathing where you're like, if the average person walks across that, they're like, you're a weirdo. What's going on?
Absolutely. Either way, it's about perspective. Even what you said with carnivore diet, some people might look at that. I mean, anybody who's vegan and whatnot, they're going to find that cringe. But the reality is, there are things out there that it's all opinion, it's all perspective. But what you have said is you found what works well for you, and you've been doing this for a long time now. And now, that being said, you have to know at this point that what works for you obviously doesn't necessarily work for everybody that is out there. And that's okay. But there's still a lot of people that you help and that have similar interests or work similarly to you. But even if they don't align with exactly the things that you do, there's still plenty of things that people can take away.
100%. And surprisingly, even some of these more extreme things like the carnivore, I found that once people adopt some of those things, they get transformation. Like I had a guy, he's one of my instructors for martial arts, and he was struggling with a lot of different pieces around diet. And he switched to carnivore inside of 90 days, lost like 40 to 60 pounds, look 15 years younger. It's like unexpected. And I think a lot of us, we dive into things and we're pleasantly surprised, at the inside of it. So I don't know. I mean, but yeah, what you mentioned is right. There's not one thing that's right for everybody. There's not one tool that always works best for someone. We need to find the things that work for each of us. I do believe that, like, if you tap into some of these roots of stress, thermogenic training, cold and heat, like these practices are ancient for every culture. For every culture, we've got it. If we talk about, some of the cold training aspects, for example, like my buddy up here, he's part of the Blackfeet Nation. Like that's part of his background. Well, what did that group do? Well, gosh, there's stories documenting those guys getting into cold rivers all year long for health and for fitness and also for hunting. Like they're the warriors, the hunters, they would put their hands in the cold streams in Montana and all these like brutal cold places, Wyoming, Western Washington, that kind of places, where they're dipping their hands so that they could shoot arrows without using gloves because they were more dexterous. So this is not an uncommon thing for that group. We've got, the Nordic traditions that go forever around cold and heat. You've got Japanese cultures. You've got Russian cultures. Name the place. So many of these places have these thermogenic trainings, and it's not by accident. And you can even go in close to the equator and you've got heat ceremonies, these temazcals and these different traditional heat ceremonies. And again, these are throughout the whole world, Turkey to Mexico to wherever you want to go. And so that's a root stressor. And so figure out like how you can leverage that in your life. Like if there's only 5 root stressors and if we nail them and you find the ways to train those and work around them, there's no question you're going to be better off. So although we need individual preferences, there are still principles that I think we can all abide by.
Okay, so let's talk about those. What are the 5 root stressors?
So we've got the thermogenic training, that's your heat and your cold. You've got your conflict. And so I put into sort of that conflict any sort of physical exercise and outlet. Martial arts, I think, is one of the best ways to leverage it. But if you like to run, ruck, vie for a competition, whatever it is, like that's a fundamental stressor. It shows up everywhere in life. We've got another one, which is fasting. Food and nutrition can either be a stressor on our bodies, and so is fasting. Fasting is sort of that positive leverage side of things, is to go without food for a specific period. And we get new stem cell production. We clean up all the waste and so forth through a proper fasting regimen. And so periodically, I think that's really beneficial. Interesting, the carnivore diet mimics fasting in a lot of ways. Like you will produce autophagy, which is like the killing off of dead cells, but you can do that even while you're eating carnivore because you're not getting any glucose, exogenous glucose, from your diet. So there's different ways to do it even outside of fasting, but that's a big one. You've got another one, which is relationships. So that's a core root stressor. And when you've got toxic relationships in your life, it's going to send us down. If you've got the positive relationships in your life, and that's like close friends, suffering together, your intimate partner, whatever that looks like, that's a leverage piece and makes all the difference. And then the last one is the breath. And the breath can steer us, to a stressor or rest, literally at will. And most of us with disrupted breathing patterns throughout the day suffer tremendously. And you'll see your weight management is off, your anxiety levels are off the chain. Maybe you're dealing with some depression. Any number of problems can arise. I mean, we know that VO2 max is one of the number one lifespan predictor and life quality predictor. Like we need to have good lungs. And so the breath is really the axis. And those traditions go back thousands of years as well.
Okay. Thanks for going over that with us. It's interesting just listening to those again. Those stressors are our body's mechanisms that need to be exercised fully, but also our bodies are complex. They're very smart too. And we have found ways over time of really short circuiting a lot of those systems, and all of those things that you're talking about working and doing properly. Like we need stress, we need healthy stress. That is a way to help rewire the system so that we are using those properly so that our body does what it's supposed to do. Yeah, I could nerd out and go way into that, but we'll leave that for another time. We'll probably have to do a part two with you, Matt. But let's talk about stress. Let's dig into this part a little bit more. What do you feel is the biggest misconception people have about stress?
One big misconception is people think that they can avoid it. Another one that kind of pairs with that is that if I try to be calm and peaceful, that's going to de-stress me. And a lot of times that's not true because we're in this recoil state. And especially for people that have jobs that are very stressful, or maybe we've got a disposition that is a little bit more anxious and elevated on a day-to-day basis, just having 5 or 10 minutes of calm doesn't work. You got to meet the system where it's at. And so sometimes we need to engage the system with like faster breathing, which almost mimics a stress state, and then pull us back down. Or that's why exercise, we got to go out and exercise really hard so that we get tired and we get the rebound effect of relaxation after. So I think those two things, that we can just immediately de-stress or calm down, or that we can avoid it somehow. You're not going to avoid it.
Okay. So if stress overall isn't the enemy, what is the enemy?
I think the enemy is that belief that you can be calm. Some of the most Yanri people are the ones that are, supposedly like the yogi that's so peaceful all the time, and you see the agitation just deep inside of them. So I would say trying to always be calm is maybe the enemy in a lot of ways, or denying that need for that outlet.
It's moderation in everything, finding balance. That is when we find balance pretty much with everything, because there's two sides of every coin, and that can be said about so many things. But if we can truly find some balance in between that, managing the calm and the stress, letting them live together and finding healthy ways to do that, that's where we're good. But if we're extreme, really on either side of it, because they can't ever exercise that or bring it back to baseline, like that's too much as well. I would assume you would agree with that. But somebody on the other side of the spectrum that always just tries to live in the calm and not embrace that our world is stressful. Our bodies are meant to deal with stress. And if we try to pretend that it doesn't exist, that's not healthy either. Because our bodies are meant to actually deal with stress. And so they should exercise those valves, use those systems. And if you don't use them, I mean, you don't necessarily lose them, but you gotta go ways to find them again.
Yeah. I think if we can lean in on either side, if I'm always avoiding conflict, for example, chances are I'm going to undermine my own interest, and I'm probably going to not speak my truth, that kind of thing. It's like, no, sometimes you got to lean in. How do we manage that? We lean into that side, and we learn how to speak truth, or stand up, or have some courage around it, or share it. So it's like all of these pieces, we need both sides. And often to get the other side, you got to lean into one or the other. The way to really achieve peace and calm, go to that other side, push into those other levers.
I like that. You've worked with pretty much everyone at this point, big corporate giants, you've worked with military, you've worked with first responders. Is there anything that translates across the board with everybody that seems to be the same?
I feel like there's big groups of people that are maybe surprisingly connected. And maybe not so surprising. It depends on sort of perspective, but like the really high level performers. So that could be your military, your first responders, your ER docs, your business executives. Like some people are doing much more physical work, other people are doing much more mental and emotional work, but they're engaged constantly. They tend to be grouped and have a lot of similarities, and need a set of tools that will help them perform better, help them to be present in the moment, but really on the other side, get them out of that high stress state. I feel like that's more central. And other people need just a boost because they're really just on the other side of it. Like they're unmotivated. They're not feeling like they've got any energy. They've got depression around. They're just feeling down, and they have a hard time getting off the couch sometimes,
Okay.
and they need a different set.
Yeah. I think it goes back into what we were just talking about, is that there is a dichotomy. A lot of us live in the extremes. High performers, right, don't know how to come down necessarily. We're actually kind of working with an app right now, or that has specifically worked with high performers on a regular basis, So let's say Tom Brady. Let's just put this into a very real life perspective. When Tom Brady was playing, at the point that he was at, he had every coach, every trainer, he had worked with them. He didn't need somebody else to necessarily get better at how to play football. What he needed was how to get better at all the other stuff when he was no longer in the game. And so what does that look like? And so basically somebody on the other side of things to be able to bring him down to work with things. And then I don't even know if Tom Brady used this app or anything like that, but that's just an example. Two groups of people, the people that need the motivation and need brought up, and the other side that need the way to come back down from.
Yeah, that and those two camps are pretty solid, even
Yeah.
across a lot of individual variation.
Yeah,
They tend to fall into
absolutely.
both of
And
those pieces.
yeah, exactly. And saying that, that doesn't mean that you can't have somebody who is a high performer that falls into the other side and needs to learn how to go back and find that motivation again. So obviously people can crisscross, and we want to meet people where they're at. Very cool. So what is the cold club protocol?
So I've actually written a variety of protocols to help people have specific outcomes. So, and I think that's one thing that's missing in the space that a lot of people don't understand. They think, well, cold is just cold, so I'm just going to go get in the cold and that's it. Or heat is just heat, I'm going to go get into heat. And actually, no, like if we want a specific adaptation, then we're going to go through a specific protocol. And so I've got one, for example, that you start in the cold. You only do the cold. And why? Because you're relying on your body to develop the pathways and resilience to manage that side of the coin better. And so you'd follow in, like, for example, a great like power booster. If you're trying to get cold habituation, well, don't include any exogenous heat sources. Don't include your sauna. Don't go get in that hot shower afterward that you want so badly. Like, let your body do the work. And how do you warm up? With a little bit of dynamic tension exercises, or go for a ruck or a walk. Like, manage your own heating system. And so you'll start in and you'll do your time. And what I always suggest, I've got it. I usually say start off 2 to 3 minutes in the cold, because that's skin cooling mostly only. It's challenging. Your vascular system is going to work, but it's short enough that you can recover and then get out, equal time rest, and then go back in. That's a mental hurdle. It's also a physical hurdle, but it's a mental hurdle too, right? Because you're going to have that resistance. You probably had it before, and now you're going to have it again. And so it's going to habituate you and also help you show up over and over as you meet these stressors and resters. So that power up protocol is really good. Whereas we've got other protocols that are looking for faster balance in our ability to adapt and shift between cold and heat. And so we'll go in for, like, let's say 2 to 3 minutes in the cold and then 20 to 30 minutes in the sauna, and flip that back and forth. And that's going to produce the ability to adapt to both of those extremes better. Now, why is that important? It sounds really simple in a lot of ways, but I'll give you a story real quick. So there's a professional runner. He does all the high level ultra marathons, some of the best competitions throughout the world. And he was using a lot of contrast therapy in order to help him manage his thermogenic adaptations, right? He's trying to get better. Because when he's in these long runs, these 200 milers, just insane distances, he was finding he was losing heat and couldn't maintain his warmth. That was his biggest challenge. It wasn't how his feet hurt. It wasn't how his body hurt. Everything hurts. But it was managing that heat system. And I said, well, okay, what's your regimen? He's doing the contrast all the time. I said, do you ever do cold by itself? He said, well, no. I said, well, okay, let's see how your body does. And this is a guy that could go 4 or 5 minutes easy, like multiple rounds of 4 to 5 minutes in 44 degrees. And we'd go into the sauna at like 260 at that place. It's extremely hot sauna. It was a banya, Russian banya style sauna there. And as soon as he came out to nature with me, he could hardly do 2 minutes and warm up. It's like the body shows up how we train it. So if we want specific adaptations, we need specific protocols to produce that desired outcome.
Mm.
And so I've written protocols that are heat only, that are cold only, that are contrast, and they're all looking to develop different parts of our bodies.
I would assume the same goes for breath work.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I'm limited in my knowledge, but breath is powerful, right? It can really, it can preemptively prepare us for a lot of things. We can use it to really set our mind right to accomplish something challenging, work a little bit harder. It can help us in the moment if we can be mindful about it. And then also afterwards, I'm putting into kind of loose perspectives here, I'm sure, but it can also help us really come back down and relax and get our heads right after something big as well.
Just you nailed it, man. And I'll give you an example. So we put some protocols together for soldiers coming out of war. And this is actually field tested with over 10,000 soldiers. So this is real thing in real wartime. And this is in the recent past, right? This is not old. So what did we find? Well, if you do some of the faster style breathing combined with exhale breath holds, that can be really stimulating and also bring us back down. But it requires some variation. So Wim Hof method, for example, that's one of the most popular breathing styles that's out there. And we always think about it in terms of, well, people think about it differently, I guess, but designed in its best way, it is a way to train the nervous system to stress and rest together, right? So that the breathing cycles create a stress state and the breath hold creates that resting state so that you train it. As soon as you've done the stress, you're now flipped to the rest side. And then at the bottom end of that breath hold, your body starts to stress again, and it leads you into that next round. Well, doing the standard basic protocol for the Wim Hof method at, let's just say, 20 to 25 breaths per minute is way too much, especially combined with an extended breath hold, because the breath hold serves as an amplifier. And so it becomes too much if you are high elevated and trying to come out of a high elevated state. Yeah. And so for the soldiers, we modified it. And what we did is we slowed the breathing down. We shifted it to the nose, still deep breath cycles that are steering you into a stress state slightly because it meets your elevated system where it's at. But it needs to be done a little bit slower, nose only, and shorter breath holds to make sure you're not jacking the adrenaline too much. It's just tapping into the system. And by doing that, what did we find? Soldiers were able to get out of that recoil much faster. They were able to be operational a lot faster, to go back in, and they felt like they could manage like just the overall emotions that are associated with that extreme endeavor. So that's the kind of thing, that's the power of breath. You think breath work is this like hippie thing? No, man. It can be, or it can be like an operational tool to help us manage emotions and mental states and physicality in the most extreme situations that we can find ourselves in.
Yeah, we're hearing it more and more. Last couple of episodes, we've had a mindfulness guru on here, Dr. Shapiro. He's phenomenal. And he starts to get into it. And he's like, we're going to talk about these foo-foo things. But the reality is, it really is no longer just this foo-foo thing. It's proven, like you said. And in some of our most elite groups. So the fact that anybody would think that it's foo-foo or this hippy dippy, it's not. It's real and it works. So I like that. So we're getting to the end here, Matt, and I apologize. I think we could go for another hour on everything that I want to ask you. And obviously, I don't want you to give away everything on this podcast either. People have to search this and they got to find this on their own. My goal is to obviously put the info out there for people to be able to access it. I do have one final question for you before we wrap up for today, but I'm pretty positive we're going to do a part 2 because I want to get into Kilimanjaro. I want to get into more of the breath work. We focused a lot on the stress and the cold plunge contrast therapy today. But you're on a mission to help 1 million people master stress. What's your plan for getting there?
I'm trying to tackle it from every angle and approach. So I'm training instructors that hopefully will help push out the mission. We've got an international training program. And I'll just say, like, if you're interested in teaching these tools and being part of this mission, come. I've developed one of the most comprehensive programs around training using these tools. Breath work, thermogenic training. We get into fasting and nutrition, the whole bit. So come join me. But that's part of the mission. Writing books. I'm trying to get that. That reaches a lot of people. Teaching workshops. Bringing in people like the world record holder, Andre Lemieux. He's coming out to my place in Seattle. We're doing a big event there where he's going to do an ice demonstration and we'll do motivational talks. I'm just trying to tap into everything and just be available for people as well. Every angle I can push in.
Awesome. I think you're well on your way. You're doing awesome things. I love it. Obviously, we've got your website, coldclub.com. Is that the best place for people to go?
Yeah, because it'll link you to all of my social media. I've got a contact page on there. And just recently, and this is pretty new, I've put up an opportunity for a 30-minute free session with me. If you want to discuss any of these tools or ways that I can help you, I've really taken a service position in the last few months. I've always been about service, but I'm doing 30 minutes free for anybody that wants. You can book on my Calendly, come talk to me. If you're dealing with something or you want to leverage these tools to get better, whatever it looks like, I'll give you 30 minutes free. Come join me.
Awesome. I love it. I mean, we need that. It's cool to see that because we have so many people focused on what can you do for me? And we all fall into it sometimes, but I love seeing the reality is people really are still there and people do want to be that service and like how, I'm just one tool. How can I help you? Here I am. Let me meet you where you're at. So, Matt, is there any final words you got for our listeners today before we wrap up?
I would say if you're on the fence about taking the plunge on any of this kind of stuff, like go do it. If you're somebody that's dealing with a lot of depression or PTSD or any kind of resistance, just know you're not alone. We all have it. Get in the mix. I promise you'll feel better.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. Your links, everything will be listed in the description for people to be able to find you with links to your book as well. I know we both got things today that we got to run off and do, but I want to chat some more. So let's do a part two.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Matt.
Wish you all the best.
That's it for this episode of the Forging Wellness Podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could benefit. Your support keeps this mission going. Want to help us grow? Consider making a donation. Every bit helps us bring more impactful content your way. Follow us on Instagram at ForgingWellness208 and check us out on YouTube. Thanks for being a part of the journey. Keep forging your wellness, and we'll see you next time.